What is going on, guys? It is Wrestlelamia here, back with another video. Now it's time for this year's Hell in a Cell, with 3 World Championships being decided in WWE's fearsome structure. But why was it such a shocking show? Well, join us now as we look at the 2020 edition of the pay-per-view, recapping the matches and analysing the show for the good, the bad, and the downright ugly. Be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell for daily wrestling videos, and follow us on Facebook for exclusive lists. As always, we start off with the pre-show, as backstage Elias and Retribution issue a challenge for any member of the Hurt Business to face anyone from their team. Elias insults the Hurt Business, calling them greedy businessmen and promising punishment for everyone in their way. Ooh, great insult. We then get into the first match of the night on the kickoff show, as it's a 24/7 championship match between champion R-Truth versus Drew Gulak. And Drew Gulak is looking to play mind games as he attacks R-Truth's friend Little Jimmy before the match. Yeah, he even punts him. What a bastard. Gulak showcases his technical skills, but he's no match for R-Truth's tenacity, and the champion hits a jackknife, covering Gulak for the pin. R-Truth retains the WWE 24/7 Championship. Then we move right on to the main show, and funnily enough, the pay-per-view kicks off with the I Quit Hell in a Cell match for the Universal Championship between champion Roman Reigns, who's with Paul Heyman, versus Jey Uso. Now this is a brutal match, with neither man being able to inflict enough damage to break the other man's will. Eventually, Roman Reigns gets the upper hand, and it looks like the end for Jey as WWE road agents check on him. The tribal chief grabs the steel steps and prepares to destroy Jey when Jimmy runs in, pleading with Roman to stop. Roman locks Jimmy in the guillotine, leading to Jey saying, "I quit." Thus, Roman Reigns retains the Universal Championship. After the match, Alpha and Sika of the Wild Samoans greet Reigns on the entrance ramp, acknowledging him as the tribal chief. Looks like Roman's uncle Alpha and dad Sika are on board with his new attitude, even though he almost killed his cousin. Next up, it's Elias versus Jeff Hardy. And before the match, Elias begins a song, but he's interrupted by Jeff Hardy. A brief back and forth affair that sees things spill out of the ring, and Elias grabs his guitar, but Jeff snatches it away, cracking it over Elias's back and getting the disqualification in the process. Elias wins, but only by disqualification. Next up, it's Otis, who's with Tucker, versus The Miz, who's with John Morrison, and if The Miz wins, he becomes Mr. Money in the Bank. Now it's a battle of power over finesse, as Otis uses his power advantage to steamroll over The Miz. The Miz stays alive though, thanks to heel tactics, including some timely distractions from John Morrison. By the way, didn't Morrison look weird without a beard? Kinda looked like Jerry Sags. However, Morrison's interference backfires and he's sent to the back. Otis looks to have things going his way, but that is until tag team partner Tucker clobbers him with the briefcase, allowing Miz to get the easy pin. The Miz is the new Mr. Money in the Bank. Kyla Braxton interviews The Miz and Morrison backstage, with The Miz warning both the WWE Champion and Universal Champion to watch out because they'll never see him coming. Tucker shows up and tells Braxton he was tired of coming second to Otis, but Otis shows up and the two former tag partners begin brawling. Next up, it's the second Hell in a Cell match of the night for the SmackDown Women's Championship, as champion Bayley takes on the boss Sasha Banks. It's a brutal bout for Sasha Banks, as Bayley shows why she's held the SmackDown Women's Championship for over 380 days, targeting Banks' recently injured neck and blasting the boss with kendo sticks and steel chairs. Banks gets in occasional hope spots, but things begin to look bleak, but finally Bayley goes to end the match by holding a chair on Banks' back and hitting the Bayley to belly. However, Banks counters and Bayley's face smashes right into the chair. Sasha seizes the opportunity and traps Bayley's head in the chair, locking in the Banks statement and forcing Bayley to submit. Sasha Banks is the new SmackDown Women's Champion. Backstage, Charlie Caruso interviews the Hurt Business about Retribution's challenge to have one of their wrestlers face someone from the Hurt Business. MVP tells Charlie Caruso that Bobby Lashley is the CEO of the Hurt Business and he leads them by example. He will lead them into battle, and he's also putting the United States Championship on the line. Now that match is up next, as champion Bobby Lashley takes on Slapjack. Slapjack proves to be no match for the Almighty as Lashley applies the Hurt Lock, forcing Slapjack to give up. Bobby Lashley retains. After the match, Retribution runs in and attacks Bobby Lashley, using the numbers game to their advantage, but the Hurt Business quickly runs in for the save, sending Retribution running back. And now it's time for the main event, as it's a Hell in a Cell match for the WWE Championship, as champion Drew McIntyre takes on Randy Orton. Now, a disguised Orton tries to ambush Drew before the match, but the champion fights him off, dishing out a world champion-like beating to the man who has put him and his friends through hell for the last 2 months. McIntyre's thirst for vengeance gets the best of him, and Orton capitalizes, mounting a comeback and going to inflict punishment of his own. The match takes a turning point when Randy Orton and Drew battle on the top of the cage, and Randy crawls down the cage with Drew following, only for Orton to knock him off, sending him crashing into the announce table. Drew mounts a brief comeback, but when Orton dodges a Claymore kick, Drew steps into an RKO and the Viper covers him for the 1-2-3. The pay-per-view closes out with Randy Orton as the new WWE Champion. Now that was a quick recap of the pay-per-view. Now let's look at the good, the bad, and the downright ugly of the show. As always, we start off with the good as number 1, a fantastic finish. Now, the WWE painted itself into a corner by making the Roman Reigns vs Jey Uso an I Quit match, but let's give him credit for finding an escape route. On paper, the idea of Jey Uso giving up went against everything fans expect from a babyface, i.e. a refusal to quit. In fact, the WWE seemed to be repeating its situation from last year's Hell in a Cell, where Universal Champion Seth Rollins faced the seemingly unbeatable opponent The Fiend in a match where there must be a winner, and that the winner had to be The Fiend. But not so tonight, as WWE put Jimmy Uso in harm's way, the one scenario where Jey would say, "I quit," not to save himself, but to save his brother. Number 2, The Miz is Mr. Money in the Bank. Our long national nightmare is over, as Otis is no longer Mr. Money in the Bank, and the briefcase is now with a more credible claimant, The Miz. The Money in the Bank briefcase is a fantastic gimmick that has stood the test of time, but few fans would doubt it's lost some of its sparkle thanks to less than illustrious individuals holding it. Unfortunately, Otis was one of them, and no matter how funny it was having Otis stumble into winning it, they failed to find a payoff for the win, forcing them to take it off SmackDown's lovable loser. Putting the briefcase in The Miz's hands offers more opportunities for a sneaky heel to cash it in, rather than putting it on an untested wrestler better known for his tag team exploits and storyline romance with Mandy Rose. There's no guarantee The Miz will successfully cash in the briefcase, but there's considerably more potential for storytelling with him ready to strike at any moment. Number 3, a hellacious encounter. The WWE definitely overdid things by having 3 Hell in a Cell matches, as Roman Reigns and Jey Uso could simply have been just an I Quit match, or pretty much just a normal Hell in a Cell match. However, the WWE made up for this with a fantastic bout between Sasha Banks and Bayley that lived up to the brutality and violence fans have come to expect from these matches. Bayley has been a fantastic women's champion, and a loss to Banks will hopefully give the boss momentum as she goes into her first reign as SmackDown Women's Champion. One of the biggest questions fans have to be asking is where the Banks vs Bayley feud goes on from here. It's almost unthinkable to imagine their feud ending after basically one match. There's no reason to count their previous bout on SmackDown, but stranger things have happened in the WWE. Number 4, The Viper strikes. Although Drew McIntyre fans will be upset that he finally lost a one-on-one match to Randy Orton, the match makes complete sense as Orton used his experience advantage to outthink Drew in one of WWE's most dangerous matches. Orton let McIntyre's temper and quest for revenge get the best of him, allowing the Viper to capitalize on McIntyre's mistakes and find his way to a hard-fought win. But that was the good. What about the bad? As number 1, the Phantom Punt. Now, we're not talking about Randy Orton's unfortunate habit of delivering punt kicks to opponents that miss the mark by miles. We're talking about Drew Gulak's ridiculous attack on R-Truth's friend Little Jimmy, a move that maybe made sense as a mind game, but shows just how much Gulak's career has sunk. Last spring, it looked like Gulak was being primed for a serious push in the upper card, and now he's playing straight man to R-Truth on the pre-show. Number 2, an odd opener. While we enjoyed the Hell in a Cell match between Roman Reigns and Jey Uso, putting it on as the opening match made no sense. The match was violent and it had the best storytelling going into the show. Of course, it was right for the WWE to put the championship match on last, but to put this match on first may have been a bit of a mistake. Number 3, Otis's push. What can fans say about the end of Otis's push other than it was a long time coming, and no matter how lovable the big man became in many fans' eyes, he never seemed credible as an upper card singles performer, let alone someone believable as a world champion. Putting the Money in the Bank briefcase on Otis was typical hotshot booking with the WWE, getting lots of attention, but fans quickly realizing there was no way the storyline would end well for Otis. Now, he did his best with his push, but the WWE did everything they could to force themselves to take the briefcase off him, sending his girlfriend to Raw and leaving him on SmackDown, where he was overshadowed by a white-hot heel in Roman Reigns. Could the WWE have saved Otis's push? Well, possibly, but it would have taken more effort and creativity than the promotion is known for. A sad situation for Otis, who has much to offer as a comedy character. Number 4, a ridiculous referee. Now, speaking of the opening match, someone needs to tell that referee that officials should never make himself the center of a match. Well, that being short of an angle such as a heel referee or a segment such as a referee bump. But that wasn't the case, as the referee's repeated questions of "what do you say?" or "all you gotta say is I quit, Jey," became obnoxious and downright cringy. Not since Roddy Piper's stint as special referee for the Bob Backlund vs Bret Hart I Quit match has an annoying referee left fans saying "I quit." And number 5, Retribution gets wrecked. Is Retribution supposed to be some sort of threat to anyone in WWE? While the group seems menacing, it's quickly become clear that they're the proverbial paper tigers. There have been rumors for weeks of Retribution being yet another idea that's been booked on the fly, and judging by the repeated losses to the Hurt Business, they've quickly become the latest set of new toys Vince has grown bored with. Now, there was nothing downright ugly of tonight's pay-per-view, but WWE didn't exactly put much effort into this show, and simply counted on the Hell in a Cell matches selling it. Regrettably, it showed us every match that didn't take place in the cell was a dud, and made much of the show seem like an episode of Raw. This wasn't by far the worst pay-per-view that the WWE has put on, but the lack of effort in the undercard kept the show from being one of the better Hell in a Cell events. But what did you guys think of this year's Hell in a Cell pay-per-view? Let us know in the comments down below, subscribe if you haven't already, follow us on Instagram and Facebook for exclusive lists, and I'll see you next time with some more wrestling content.